guys, I'm Mikesell, if you didn't already know, and over the summer I read the book The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. Went pretty try hard on my annotations, if you can't tell. Um, but yeah, this is truly an American classic. I stumbled upon this book while researching novels with literary merit, and aside from Mr. Beckford's word that it was a great book, I was also immediately drawn to the time period that this story is set in. So the fact that this novel was published in 1939 during the Great Depression, and it was about the Great Depression, makes it such a significant piece of work. Steinbeck's accurate depiction of the mood of the nation at the time was shown through one family and their experiences traveling west to California. Throughout the novel, issues with poor migrants, migrant camps, and working conditions out west are brought up almost nonstop. The reason the book goes down as a great American novel is because of how poignant the message was and still is. Considering how it shows and showed the brutally honest picture of the Great Depression during the Great Depression, it is no surprise that it caused quite the social uproar, and it was even publicly banned due to some political motivations in some cities. So, in terms of the storyline of this novel, the protagonist is Tom Joad, and the rest of the story revolves around his family, the Joad family. But it opens up with him being released from jail, and he is going back to find his town, to find his family, except the whole town is abandoned except for the old preacher Jim Casey. Now, Jim Casey used to be a preacher, but it's kind of central to the story that he doesn't preach anymore. So I'll come back to that later when I talk about symbolism and significance. But the two of them eventually find Tom's family, who is packing up to head west because they have seen these pamphlets that say there's plentiful work out in California, and they're going to search for it because they're stuck in the heart of the Dust Bowl, which is Oklahoma. The trek is long, and they meet people that laugh at their journey on the way because a lot of the people have already been to California and come back because the situation there wasn't any better than it was at home. But the Joad family tries to keep hope as they head west. They do lose a few family members like Grandma and Grandpa on the way, and they do spend time in these shady Hoovervilles that are terrible conditions to live in. But eventually they do get to California, and it is beautiful in terms of the landscape, but the terrible reality is that they are mistreated, they're discriminated against and called Okies, and they can't find any work. In the end, the family is separated, and it is quite a sad ending, but if you think about it, it is fitting for the time period that the story is set in. So there are a few big points in this novel. They're told through the Joad family's perspective and through just the average American life at the time that is depicted in the novel. But one of the big points that has a lot of facets is American pride. For example, the fathers that provided for their families, they were the sole providers. So when there was a bad harvest, or since the times in the Depression were so bad, a lot of times they couldn't provide and they couldn't handle that, so they literally just left the family. Also, characters like Muley Graves and Grandpa were so attached to their land and they were so proud of their heritage that they didn't feel that it was right to move west in search of jobs because this is the land that they had grown up on and this is where they were meant to stay their entire lives. Another big point is just the fact that you got to do what you got to do. There are a lot of quotes in here that reflect this. I'll read a few of them now, but this one says, "I know this, a man got to do what he got to do." And then here's one more, right quick. "It don't take no nerve to do something when there ain't nothing else you can do." And both of these just reflect that idea of you just got to do what you got to do whenever it's in the Great Depression. A relationship between Casey and Tom also poses a pretty interesting idea in the novel. It's more religious on the religious aspect, but Casey, at the beginning, he opens up as a ex-preacher, essentially. He was a preacher, pretty well-known preacher, but he doesn't preach anymore. But Tom kind of takes this, and as he spends more time with Muley and with the family, he kind of takes that responsibility and almost becomes a Christ figure in the novel because um, he's the one that speaks reason and like brings hope back into the family. And there's even a quote here. It's pretty interesting when his father says, "Here's Tommy talking like a grown up man, talking like a preacher almost." And it just I found that quote really interesting because it just shows how he kind of took that role when Casey had kind of left that for someone else to take up. Overall, The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, great novel. Definitely would recommend this. Definitely a little sad, but you learn a lot about the Great Depression and about what life was like back in the 30s.